Hey everybody, this is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to another edition of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. I hope all of you listening had a chance to enjoy your long holiday weekend, and we are back at it this week with a tremendous episode today about running a successful team. And there is nobody better to help me cover this topic today than Doug Edrington. Doug is the CEO of BHHS J. Douglas Properties in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He is also the managing partner of the Edrington team. Doug and his team are number 1 in the Chattanooga area, number 6 nationally in the BHHS Network, selling 460 homes in the year of 2022 and over 1,700 homes in the past 4 years. So today, we're lucky enough to pick Doug's brain about what it means to be a team leader, how to structure a successful team, what values to look for when hiring new team members, and how to challenge your team members every day to be better and more productive agents. We're going to cover all that and more, so let's get right into it with Doug, and we'll pick it up on the other side. Doug, I'm super excited to have you on today to talk about teams. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Jason. Thanks for having me on. I'm honored to have an intro like that.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll tell you what, the pleasure is all mine. And like I had mentioned, you were a spotlight speaker out there in Vegas, and I was so impressed with your approach to running your team that I had to ask you to join me for an episode, which you were gracious enough to accept, and I really appreciate that. And what stood out to me is the way that you systematically and strategically run your team. And I'd like to start, number one, because you are a younger guy. I believe you're 38 years old, correct?
I am.
And you got into the business, way early, 18 years old. Your family has been in real estate. So I'd like to start with a little background about you and your real estate career, being that you're on the younger side and running the number 1 team down there in Chattanooga. How did your career evolve to where you are now?
Well, I think it has to do with having a lot of great mentors, right? And we hear a lot of people say, surround yourself with the right people. You are the sum of the 5 people you hang out with. We've all heard things like that before. And I've talked to a lot of people about this in the past, and they're like, that's easy for some people to say. Right. And for others, they don't have those mentors. Well, I didn't necessarily have those mentors either. I mean, I grew up in a normal household. A lot of people think I'm second generation real estate agent. My parents got their license actually a year before I did. And so we all dove in at a similar time. I was just the kid at the time. People asked me what I did before this, and I was like, I was a kid, literally. But I have had the opportunity at a young age to have some good people around me. But as I started to get into my young 20s, which is kind of funny to say, but as I got into my young 20s being in real estate, started going to some of these conferences, and I think I was young and dumb enough to think that it was okay to walk up to the stage and talk to the speaker after they were done talking and ask a lot of questions, even if it was a large speaker that didn't do the Q&A after that, like some of the smaller breakouts do. And I think by just putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, that's half the battle in creating some of these mentorship relationships. Most of these people at the highest level, they want to help. They absolutely want to help. And they enjoy helping people. I will say that I've learned they also really enjoy the follow-up. Because it's like, how many conferences have you gone to, Jason? You've talked to someone, you picked their brain, and then you said thank you, and you never speak to them again. I've done it too. But if you email them, text them, call them, and say, hey, I just wanted to reach out to you. Like 4 months ago, you gave me a tip, and I executed on it, and here's what it did for me, and it was amazing. I just wanted to say thank you. Those people that took their time to give you a nugget, they really appreciate when you call them back. And then that's when the magic starts happening, because they're like, wow, I've heard this so many times from people, from coaches, from Gino Blafari, our CEO of Home Services of America, who literally said to me one time, he's like, hey, thanks for calling back. No one ever does this. And a relationship got created. I think I can say this now. Gino's said this pretty openly at some of the events before, but I've built such a relationship with Gino. He's become a client. I've sold him like 20 houses in Chattanooga, we all get close with our clients sometimes, right? Imagine having Gino as a client, like the relationships that you get to build over those times and all the connections he's made. So I know that's a long answer to your first question, but like, how do you get started in building a great organization? Just don't do it by yourself. Ask for a lot of help along the way.
Well, I think that's a great answer. And I remember reaching out to Christy Budnick for our 50th episode on the podcast.
Oh, nice.
And I was just amazed at how down to earth and friendly and eager she was to join me on the podcast. Larry Kendall is another person that I think of from Ninja Selling, was all too happy to come on the podcast and join me. And it's just opened doors for relationships. Yourself, you were very eager to come on and you were like, let's do it. I remember asking you to come on. I think we were standing outside of the bathroom at a restaurant in Vegas. I was like, hey, man, would you consider coming on the podcast? And you were like, yeah, let's do it. And it's leading to our relationship now. You never know just by asking what doors can be opened by, just being bold enough to ask the question. So if you were starting a team tomorrow, now that you've been obviously a team leader for a long time, if you were starting a team tomorrow, what would be the first thing that you would recommend that agent starting a team should do?
Well, sounds a little boring, but I think it starts with a business plan. It starts with the business plan, and you should take that plan of what you want to build, and you should test it. You should test it in a sense of all your peers, your mentors, your broker, whoever you look up to, and you say, I like to call it my unofficial board of directors. Imagine if in your, at home in your inside your bedroom closet door, if you literally just took all the faces and you put them up on a poster and said, hey, this is my board of directors. My newest board of director is ChatGPT. You got it. There's a lot of resources out there. It's not always a person. It could be a resource. But before I make any major decision, I want to run it past my, I'm using air quotes here, but my board of directors and let them give me some feedback. It's feedback. That's all it is. You are still in control. You still make the decision at the end of the day. But I had a team member of mine one time come to me and say, hey, I think I want to maybe branch off of the Edrington team and start a team. I said, awesome, let's do it. And I think he was really taken by surprise. Like, that it's kind of scary if you're a team member on a team and you're going to them and saying, I'm thinking about starting my own team and compete against you, right? That's a scary conversation for some people to have, but this agent was brave enough to come to me. I said, awesome. I said, hey, let's make this your first coaching call as a team leader. And I think he was taken by surprise. And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, are you quitting today? And he's like, well, I don't know. I said, well, why would you? I was like, do you have your plan figured out? And he's like, well, I've got ideas. And I said, well, stay on the team, build the plan for your own team. Let's discuss it. So when you jump out of the nest, you're ready to go. And so we went to the whiteboard in my office and I said, hey, draw out your org chart. What's your organizational chart look like? And so he drew out his org chart and I said, okay, let's go to the other side of the board and let's do a P&L, an annual P&L. How much are each of these agents that you're going to have on your team going to earn? How much are you going to earn from it? What's all your expenses, employees, staff, overhead, CRMs, lead generation, client events, whatever you're going to do. And so we went through this exercise, built the org chart. He went through the exercise. I just guided him. He built the org chart, built the P&L, and he looked at it at the end and he said, damn, I make more money on the team than I do in this business plan that we just built here. And I said, what does that make you think? He's like, I don't know. I said, but you got two options. You either have to think bigger or you need to leverage the current situation you're in. But right now, you starting a team on your own is not going to make you more money. So what are you doing it for? Is it just ego? And so it really made him think. That agent's still on my team today. But in a new capacity because I discovered he wanted to lead. So what we ended up coming up with together is that he needs to learn to be a leader before he jumps out on his own. So we made him a mentor within our team and he gets to train new agents and he gets to work with them and he gets to be a part of building out what that mentorship looks like when we improve the versions each year. And this conversation was years ago. And so for the individuals out there that are saying, I'm going to build a team, start with a business plan, lean on lots of mentors, but can you potentially start practicing the leadership side of things within the organization you're already in before you jump out of the nest? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the questions I was going to get into a little bit later in the podcast, but I'll just jump into it now, is how do you define success on your end with your team, right? Is your ultimate goal to retain your team members, or is your ultimate goal to grow them into their own team leaders? I think there's, different philosophies when it comes to that. What do you consider yours to be?
Well, as a team leader, retention's important, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I do want to keep my team members, but I look at it this way: it's a constant race for value. And what I mean by that is if I have a team member that doesn't feel they're getting value from me anymore, I've lost the race. I'm likely to lose that person. And honestly, I don't deserve to keep that person within my organization if I'm not providing them the value, or I've generally just hired the wrong person. We don't connect. We're not a good match. We're not a good pair. There's a lot of great agents in Chattanooga, Tennessee that are great. They produce a lot. That person and I may not be able to work well together, so we're not a good match. It's not that I'm going to be able to keep everybody, but it's a race for value. As long as I continue to provide value to them, they want to stay. People want to be challenged. And so if you're thinking about starting a team and you don't have the confidence to be able to challenge individuals around you, you're going to have a huge retention problem. And so, leadership is not easy. A lot of people think they're natural leaders. And I am guilty of that. I used to think I was a natural leader at one time. And I might have some natural tendencies, and other people may have some natural tendencies. They may be able to draw attention to a crowd. They may have some good past experience to offer others. But leadership is a learned skill at a level that is very difficult to master. And I learned this the hardest. Tom Ferry, you're probably familiar with Tom.
Yep.
I've been coaching with Tom and his company for quite a while now, and a couple of years into my relationship of being a client, I got recruited to come and coach for them. And when I first got that recruiting call, I thought, oh my God, there's no way I could do that. And the recruiter was good, and he told me all the pros and cons about it all. And it really had nothing to do with the money of it. It had to do with what I'd learned and how I'd become a better leader. And so I went through this boot camp. This is before COVID. Now I think they do it virtually, but before COVID, I had to fly out to California to their headquarters and sit through a class. And I learned, like, literally in the first day, I was like, oh no, I'm a good salesperson, but I'm not necessarily a good leader. But within going through their training program and learning how to become a coach for them, I learned so much. So I think the theme probably of this call, where it's headed, it seems like, or this podcast is really about, don't stop learning. Don't stop surrounding yourself with greater people than you. You got to be the dumbest person in the room. We've heard things like that before, but you got to challenge yourself. You got to challenge yourself so you can therefore challenge others. But it's a race for value, Jason.
Well, being the dumbest person in the room is not difficult for me. So I'm already,
you and me both.
I'm way ahead of you there. So I do have to ask you, so you're talking about you, but I'd like to talk about your agents and your hiring process when you actually do take on new team members. Do you look for certain personality traits? Do you want people of a similar mindset, or do you want to look for different skill sets when you're hiring new agents? Do you want an eclectic group of agents to be on your team? How do you go through your hiring process, and what are you looking for when hiring new team members?
So we have what we call our hiring values. Okay, some of this is stolen, some of this is modified, and it's all okay. If you want to steal this, steal it for yourself. Hungry. All right, they got to want to work, right? We all know the agent that doesn't have to earn money. and people generally will do what they need to do to survive. So if you hire someone that's not in a place to have to earn money, they're likely not to earn money for you and for themselves, right? So hungry. Second one's humble. We can't have any mega egos on the team because it always tears things down. So we need hungry and humble people. Hungry, humble, smart. Okay, so smart's a hard one to identify, I've learned, because there's street smarts and there's book smarts, and they're both very important in this business. We don't want to get sued, right? And so we need to make sure that people are smart enough to slow down and read. I'm blown away about the amount of people that in our industry that will call up their broker, their team leader, and say, I'm in this situation. I don't know what to do. My answer is, hey, let's read the contract together, right? So hungry, humble, smart is really important. With professional maturity is our next hiring value. What I mean by professional maturity is I don't care if they're 18 years old or if they're 80 years old. The question is do they have professional maturity? We're in the South. We're in the Bible Belt, right? I want to have a diverse team. I do have a very diverse team. But at the same time, we've got to make sure that they're professionally mature. We are actually scouring their social media before we even reach out to recruit an individual agent, because we want to know, does this individual, are they half naked on their social media half the time? We need them to be Swiss. What I mean by that is, we don't need to have any strong points of views from an individual. I don't want to tell someone they can't have strong points of views, but you're a salesperson and you're always on in real estate. Are you smart enough and professionally mature enough to know where that's appropriate to share and where it's not? And so, we don't want to, in our world today, we don't want to push away half of our database because we have a different view from them, right? And then the last one, so hungry, humble, smart with professional maturity, and we say a little bit of swag. And what I mean by a little bit of swag is you got to be extroverted in this business for the most part. You got to be able to walk into a room and light up a room and have a conversation. You can't walk into a room and then leave and then no one even knew you were there. So you got to have a little swag too. That's our hiring values. And then the one that I remind myself often, and I've got a full-time recruiter, and him and I talk about this all the time, is do they pass the vacation test? And what I mean by the vacation test is not that I would go on vacation with every person in our company, but could I? And a lot of times we do, because of all these real estate events that we have. We might hop in a car or hop on a plane and go somewhere together. And the question we got to ask ourselves is, would we want to throw them out of the window of the car an hour down the road, or even worse, jump out of the car? Because if we can't pass that vacation test, we're probably not going to work well together. Because I want to go and shadow my agents on their appointments. They want to shadow me. We're going to be spending a lot of time together. And the last thing I or they need is stress and anxiety just being around the wrong people. So that kind of sums up our hiring values and our philosophy in a nutshell.
I think that's a podcast episode right there. I mean, we could slice this and dice this, and I'd have evergreen content with you for the next 10 years. I mean,
again, I didn't make all this up. This is all stuff that I've gathered and learned, and these have changed and evolved over the years. We need to be able to tell the world what our hiring values are. Right. And so then it was like, how do we decide that in the interview process? And so we just started developing these processes and these questions to learn that.
I kind of want to move down to Chattanooga and join your team from what you're totally speaking my whole philosophy. I think some of the things that you touched on there very specifically, I'm not going to get into what you said, but there are certain agents that I've been kind of following on social media, looking at what they do, and you are describing to a T kind of what I've seen out there and what I possibly don't want, and you do have to have your own philosophy when it comes to running your team, and yours is very specific, and I think it's excellent. You're really blowing me away with your hiring process alone. So when do you decide that it is time to add to your team? Because your team is a large team. I mean, you told me right before we hopped on, now you have 25 people on your team, right? Last year, you did 460 units in sales last year. When do you define it's time to start looking for a new team member? Is it a certain level of production unit wise, or do you go by feel and maybe an opportunity that presents itself to you to hire someone for your team? How do you keep adding?
So it's always time to grow. It's always time to grow. What I've learned in running a team is all the answers to all your questions lead to, I need to hire more agents. I'm not making enough money. You need to hire more agents. Conversion isn't good enough. You need to hire more agents so you can get better talent, right? I'm scared people might leave. You need to hire more agents, right? One of the areas that took me some time to learn, especially starting at a young age, is as leaders in general, you've got to understand the fact that you don't own people. You're just a page in their book, and they're a page in your book. I want that to be chapters long, right? But people come and go. My coach Tom, I was talking to him the other day, and I was having a tough moment a couple of weeks ago where it was just one of those weeks. It was like everything from personally to professionally was going south that week. We've all had those weeks before. It's just like, man. And I asked Tom, I said, how do you do it? How do you do it? And Tom told me this. He says, Doug, I drive the ferry train. People get on, people get off. It's just the way it works. And the moment that you get comfortable with that, you start to remove those stresses that slow you down and drive you crazy. But people get on your train, people get off your train. And you just got to get comfortable with that. And so, my goal is to be their best team leader, their best boss, their best CEO that they've ever had. Because I'm not going to be their first. I'm likely not going to be their last. But if I can be their best, it's going to pay in dividends. I mean, if they leave me and decide to go do their own thing, or they leave the industry, or they just literally change teams for whatever reason, I still want them to talk highly of me, and I want to talk highly of them, right? And every time you lose an agent, it's a lesson. It's not a failure. It's a lesson. It's like, okay, it usually comes down to, did I hire the wrong person, or did I not provide them value when they were with me? But at the end of the day, your question that you asked here is when is the right time to hire someone? It's always the right time to hire someone. I hired a recruiter last year for the first time. That was a new journey for me. I was pushed by my coach, because it's like, as I told you, the answer to all of our problems is you need to hire more people. So it was like, when are you hiring a recruiter? And I was like, ooh, that one's kind of scary. That's kind of scary, And so, but we did. And the first one didn't work out. Hired a second one. It's going stellar now. And what we're learning is that recruiting is no different than looking for buyers and sellers. It's all the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's just a different product that you're selling at this point. Instead of selling yourself as a buyer to work to represent a buyer, seller, investor, you're now selling yourself on providing value to someone to build a career. And so I don't know, now's the right time. Yesterday was the right time. Tomorrow will be the right time.
Yeah, I mean, I always looked at it the same way when I was in management. Like, you're selling your vision, you're selling your philosophy, and you're what would have been your clients, buyers and sellers, are now your agents, right? It's the same concept, it's the same thing. So, do you have defined roles in writing for your team members, and do you use contracts when hiring? Do you seem like a very regimented guy. Do you have very defined roles for your team members when you are recruiting, when you bring them on? Do you talk about what your goals for them are?
Yeah, we do. Well, first I want to know what their goals are, right? And I want to make sure that their goals align with our goals. My goal is to have every agent on my team earn $100,000. And that's my goal. In their first 12 months, I want them to earn $100,000. Whether that's their goal or not, that's my goal. We're all allowed to have our individual goals. And $100,000 in Chattanooga, Tennessee is really good money. I don't know about up north, but like here, that's really good money. Our average price point's about 350,000. And so, they got to sell a lot of houses. And so we take them through, we have a syllabus. You asked, is it in writing? We have a syllabus that we follow to train them. I have 3 mentors on my team. They're all assigned to new agents in their first 10 transactions. They stay with them on the journey through their first 10 transactions. They start as a trainer, and they follow a process of a syllabus of the things they have to learn. And the outline of that is the first certification, we call them certifications, is contracts. So everything to know about a contract from contract to close. We role play it with them. They got to go through mock trials. They've got to shadow other people and going through that process. The second one is phone scripts. The third one is buyer presentation. And the fourth one is tech. Because as you know, our industry is becoming kind of techie. There's a lot of different systems you got to use. So they got to know how to do that. When they go through those first 4 certifications, their mentor is more of a trainer at that time. This is how we do it as a team. After they pass certification, they earn lead flow. We don't give them any leads until they're certified because we don't want them practicing on paychecks. We want them practicing on the syllabus and practicing on the materials that we're providing to them to get them prepared to work with the real client. Once they're certified, they earn leads. And through their first 5 transactions, they're still really in training mode. But when we cross that 5th transaction, we tend to shift our mentors tend to shift from a trainer to a coach, because now they're dangerous. They understand the ins and outs on a one-on-one level, and they're starting to put some money in their pocket. And after that, we want to lean into the agent to figure out what's going to be their superpower. Is it door knocking? Is it open houses? Is it social media? Is it networking? Is it just simple? They're just a powerhouse salesperson and they need to leverage the team leads. Whatever it may be, we're going to shift to a coaching mentality for that through the rest of their mentorship. So yes, the more documented you can have everything, the more consistent of a process you're going to provide each of your agents, which is going to lead to a level of consistency and happiness across the board. You don't want one agent to experience a certain type of training and a different to experience the other, because then you've got 2 new agents looking at each other saying, you're getting better training than I'm getting, and this isn't fair, and it causes problems. And so that's important. To answer your question about is things in writing, do we have an agreement in writing? Absolutely. I've learned this the hard way. This is the best lessons that we've learned over the years. Here's the lesson I learned about putting things in writing. When I was a team only and I didn't own the brokerage, I had a team member agreement. And then we got into a litigious situation between myself and one of my agents, or previous agents. And we actually went to court. Only time I've ever been to court. And for me, it had nothing to do with the money that we were chasing, because we were the ones chasing some money from an agent that left and as I would see it, stole some commissions. And it wasn't about that. It was for me to test my team member agreement and the legal process to see how is this going to go down. And what I learned from it all is the judge was completely confused. It was small claims court. It wasn't a big deal. But the judge did not understand how real estate works from inside the business. They didn't understand the difference between a broker. In Tennessee, we have affiliate brokers and brokers. So brokers manage, affiliate brokers, the salespeople. Mm-hmm. And I got put up on the stand like 4 times, and we were there all day long. And I was having to teach the judge, what's the difference between a broker, a team leader, a team member, a solo agent? What do compensation plans look like? And at the end of the day, what I learned from it is that I had an ICA agreement and my team members had an ICA agreement with the broker. And then we had a team leader agreement and a team member agreement between the team members and I. And those 2 documents conflicted each other in certain areas. So it got cloudy. So my suggestion would be, this could be a little interesting conversation, but my suggestion would be, if you're a team member, get with your broker and say, can I create a team member addendum that coincides with the ICA agreement with the brokerage? So in the event we ever get into a legal battle, it's all one document and we're all on the same page, so we don't have conflicting documents. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now that I own my own brokerage, I have a brokerage ICA agreement and a team member addendum, and I have a team leader addendum because I have other teams in my brokerage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Everything just should be tested. Is how would a judge look at this, and how would a judge or jury look at this situation? So, and I'd add one more tip to this: make sure your exit plan is clearly defined, because there are tons of agreements out there. No problem getting in bed together, but getting a divorce, most of them are very muddy, and it doesn't break down what's supposed to happen in the if and what or situations.
When teams are getting divorced, when agents leave, always makes for dicey situations, uncomfortable, awkward, and at worst litigious, as you mentioned, previously. I think what you said there with the addendums, I think that's a great way to go. And like you said, having to explain to a judge all day is probably not the number one thing that you want to be doing with your time. So
it was educational and entertaining.
Well, I'm sure it's like a hand on a stove, right? You do it one time, you don't want to go through that process again.
Well, and I'll tell you, in the one situation I've been in there, the judge ruled in my favor, not on everything I wanted, but enough to where I felt like it was a victory. Then the opposing party appealed it. And I'm asking my attorney, what does this mean? Because only time I've ever been to court in my life, other than maybe a speeding ticket when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what does that mean? And they're like, well, in 2020 as COVID broke. So like, well, since it's COVID, it's probably going to get drug out for another year or two. It's going to cost you a lot more money, and we're going to have to go through a jury selection and on and on and on and on and on. And so we ended up settling and walking away from the situation because I got what I needed. I needed the education on how are these agreements going to hold up, and I learned a lot from that process.
Yeah, I would not want to go through that for, especially you were saying that it just during COVID, that would have been a mess anyway. So, so I'm going to ask you probably a question that you hear a lot. And that is, and you referred to it earlier about your lead gen for your team, right? Mm-hmm. So, you talked a little bit about like, you want to do so many transactions, or you might want to train them to a point before you start giving them stuff. Mm-hmm. But are you talking about both organic leads, like referral sources? Are you talking about pay for leads? Are you talking about both? How do you approach giving leads to your team?
Well, there's a lot of options out there for team leaders or agents to generate leads. I like to refer to it as the funnel. At the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. So picture a funnel. At the bottom of the funnel, money flows out. And so if we take those three categories, what agents want is bottom of the funnel leads. Those are leads that are saying, come open the door, I want to see the house, right? As a team leader, I think it's appropriate to generate all three levels of those leads. But what you got to know what your agents want is they want the bottom of the funnel leads. And so there's a level of, there's Zillow, there's Realtor.com, there's Homes.com, there's all these companies out there that are generating leads. I do think there's an appropriate level of that you need to be investing in, because if you want to attract agents to your team over them joining a competitor, you better have some opportunity for them, and that's just a piece of it. Now, the dangerous part of spying those, let's call them what they are, expensive leads, right? Whether you're paying per lead or you're paying a referral, because there's a lot of that out there too. It's really important that you create some standards or metrics around conversion. And so there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I'm not saying mine's the perfect way, but it works for us now. And it's changed before, it'll probably change again. But you've got to make sure you're measuring the activities of these individuals and coaching them up. So therefore, the system decides if they earn lead flow or not. Because nobody on a team or an organization wants their team leader to make emotional decisions if they deserve leads or not. Because they have an opinion that they deserve leads. Team leader has an opinion that they don't deserve leads. And if it's all based on emotion, I don't believe in this person being able to convert, therefore I'm not giving them these leads or that price point of leads or that type of lead, you're going to run your team members off very quickly. So I would recommend build out a standard of what does conversion have to look like, or how many closings do you have to have in a rolling 30 or 90 days to receive leads, or how many contracts do you have to have, or how many appointments do you have to set. There's no right or wrong answer. You just need to build a standard. Everybody needs to understand what the standard is on the team, and therefore the system turns their lead flow on or off, not the team leader. Earlier in my career, I made emotional decisions. I just don't trust that Bobby's going to be able to convert. Therefore, Bobby, this month, we're not giving you leads. Well, Bobby's pissed because Bobby's put a lot of work in and he's trying really hard. Whether he has or not, he believes that he has. And then he also believes that he's never going to make it if he doesn't get an opportunity from me. And so therefore, Bobby and my relationship is not going to end well. But if when Bobby joins the team and he understands that there's an initiation period, we're going to assume the best in you, and you're going to get leads for 30 days. After 30 days, you have to maintain this number of contracts or this percentage of conversion. And if you maintain that, you keep lead flow. If you fall out of that, you lose lead flow. So Bobby, you are in control of if you get leads or not Doug. Are you okay before joining this team understanding that? And Bobby's likely going to say, yes, that makes sense. That's fair. Great. So when Bobby gets turned off, Bobby's not coming to me saying, can I have leads? He's saying, can you help me get to where my leads are on again? That's the conversation I want all day long because I get to play coach at that point.
You know what? First and foremost, I think meritocracy is what, basically you're talking about. And I also think for those of you out there that actually watch the show, I think of Ted Lasso. And the reason why I say that is because, in soccer, you get relegated. If you don't achieve a certain level of success, you basically almost head down to the minors, right? Until you can get back into the Premier League where you'll have those leads again. So I kind of think for whatever reason, that correlation in my mind kind of sticks out to me.
It's funny you said meritocracy. We refer to our team as a tech-enabled, data-driven meritocracy.
There you go. Right.
And that it's a fun tool to use with your customers, or a phrase to use. Now you got to be able to back it up, right? But when we walk into a listing appointment, and this is probably more of a veteran conversation on my team when they're like, a lot of sellers might ask you, why are you different than the other people? Right? I got 10 people wanting to list my house. Why are you different? Well, we're a tech-enabled, data-driven meritocracy. And they're like, whoa, what does that mean? Well, we leverage tech to deliver opportunity to our team leaders. We have standards behind it. We're data-driven. Not just any bozo is going to answer your phone. They have to be able to perform. And we only reward them based on merit, the meritocracy piece. And it's a fun conversation. It's also a great conversation in recruiting. When you meet an agent and you're having that two-way interview, they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them, and you break it down like this: we're a tech-enabled, data-driven meritocracy. And they're like, huh? And that's when I heard the word meritocracy, I was like, what? I did the same thing. But then if you just Google the two root words, and like, democracy is either a government body or a group of people. We're not a government, but we are a group of people that reward that group of people based on merit conversion. Right?
It makes perfect sense. And, we were talking off camera again before the podcast about your hire one, hire us all philosophy, right? You have so many good just taglines and catchphrases. I'm like, I love Doug's mindset and just how you talk about stuff, because it does ring so true to me that, if you're going to have a team, if you strictly just base it on cold hard facts, like this is your conversion rate. Right. And I always talk about my numbers on this podcast and knowing your numbers, and you need to know your numbers when it comes to a team too. Cause like you said, you don't want to make an emotional decision because that's going to lead to angering potentially your team members. Right. It's just based on the cold, hard facts about it all. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you just two more questions. One is, so when it comes to your social media, because this is an important part of what we all do now, so do you have a dedicated person to handle your social media on your team, Or if not, how do you go about marketing on social media? How do you take that in conjunction with how many people you have on your team, and then personally what you're doing?
So that's a great question, because social media is a tool that's really important these days. It's funny. I'm no different than an agent. An agent goes through their highs and their lows, and they have their good runs where they're absolutely killing it in an area, and then they fall off the cliff. And I have personally done that with marketing and social media throughout the years. I've had really good runs where putting a ton of content out, and then, my marketing person is no longer my marketing person, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, as a team leader and a broker owner, you got a lot of things you got to do, and when you lose your leverage, it falls apart, right? And so I've gone through that phase over the past year where I just haven't had the right people in place until recently. So about 6 months ago, I think it's been about 6 months ago, hired a new director of marketing. This Thursday, we have a full-time video editor starting. And so I have a marketing coach. You may know Jason Pantana from Tom Ferry's ecosystem is working with us to get really clear on what to do. And so the coaching I'm going through right now, not really telling you what I've done, I'm going to talk more about what we're doing right now, is understanding that we're in a swipe happy audience right now. The thumb is moving constantly really fast. People are watching social media for hours and hours a day, which is nuts to think about. And you've got to understand who your audience is, and you can't confuse them. That's what I'm being taught right now. And so we have like Instagram seems to be a key player in social media these days, and that's kind of the main hub for a lot of us. And so I've got my own Instagram handle, Doug Edrington, and then we have another handle, the Edrington Team. And so one of the things Jason and I've been working on is let's start developing the right message to the right audience. So the Edrington Team is designed, that profile is designed to be consumer facing now. So, if you happen to follow me right now, please do, because I want you to watch it and see what's going on. Comment, if you got any ideas, throw it at me, because I'm learning. But it's going to be consumer facing. It's going to be tips on buying and selling. It's going to be about properties. I'm going to feature agents in it, but it's got to be value adds to the consumer. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
For my personal profile, we're going to leverage it to be an industry influencer, if you want to call it that, or for recruiting purposes. So if you're following me, you're going to hear coaching. You're going to hear what we do. I'm following a lot of great people right now that they're not making the ask necessarily to come work with me. It's not about that. It's let's educate them so well through our platforms that they are attracted to you, and they're eventually going to ask a question. They're going to reach out, which can lead to a conversation of recruiting. So for me, it's going to be featuring my agents. It's going to be focused on retention and recruiting. I'm going to be interviewing my agents, and we've shot so much, like in the past 2 weeks since we just made this hire of a video editor. So our video editor has already a backlog of content to start editing to be able to putting this stuff out there. But you got to know your audience. So for us, team platform is consumer facing. My personal platform is going to make sure that the industry knows the Edrington team, knows what's going on, and they're good to work with. And maybe we should come work with them.
Yeah, and the synergy between all those aspects that you talk about is, we've talked about personal branding, knowing your audience, your target market, all those things that you mentioned, and having your specific people. I think one of the things we were talking about is, just video clips of this podcast. And I am guilty, and we talked about this, I am guilty of not putting video out there for the podcast. And that's something that I definitely need to do and need to work on. Sometimes it comes down to the hours in a day. You are a very, very busy person. Obviously, you have a lot of irons in the fire, but you're handling it the right way with your organization. And I think that's one of those things that I personally need to work on is being better organized in my life and my schedule. So it's something that I'm constantly trying to evolve with.
There's a great book out there you should pick up. It's called Who Not How, and it's all about leverage. It's all about leverage, because there are only so many hours in the day, but how are some people extremely impressive and able to accomplish a lot, where others, they don't feel like they checked one thing off their to-do list? And the extremely impressive people have a lot of leverage in their life. And
well, yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you, Doug, but I mean, you mentioned Tom Ferry. I think of like Brian Buffini. I think of Jimmy Burgess. Like, how does Jimmy do what he did? These people amaze me with what they can do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jimmy's a great dude. I've been to his office a couple times and got to shadow him a little bit and learn from him. And it's like, he's got an assistant. I think he's got like 3 people in marketing now. He's got a crew of people. He leans on his own team members for trainings and teachings, and he's an artist at knowing that he can't do it by himself, because no one can, right? And so he loves on the people around him and helps. He finds the best of the people around him, and then lets them have that as that win, which is also a win for him.
Yeah, it's awesome. He's an awesome guy. So last thing before we get out of here. Now, I did a little research on Chattanooga. All right. Uh-huh. So is it true to say, or fair to say, that you eat a moon pie every day and drink a Coke? Because I've read that both of those come out of Chattanooga, and I did not know about either one. So are you big on the moon pie and a Coke, for lunch?
Okay, so the answer is no to that. but I will say Chattanooga, for whatever reason, has become quite the place to move to. Tennessee doesn't have a state income tax. And so we play off of some of that stuff. Our closing gifts actually include a moon pie. Because we have so many people moving from out or investing in Chattanooga, a lot of sight unseen purchases from, I don't know why California is interested in Tennessee so much, but oh my God, it's insane. But yeah, moon pie is a thing here, believe it or not. The Little Debbie. Do you guys have Little Debbie's up north?
Yeah, absolutely.
All of them are made right down the road from us, So something about the sugary sweet snacks. A lot of them come right out of our city. So there's a lot of industry here. Blue Cross Blue Shield headquarters for Tennessee's in Chattanooga. Volkswagen has a plant that they built, I don't know, 10 years or so ago. They just agreed.
I heard about that.
They just decided to double the size of the plant, electric vehicles and all that stuff. A lot of industry here, so a lot of jobs, but it's not really overpopulated yet, but it's growing like crazy. I mean, there were areas that I would not want to even go show a house to, and now those are like booming places. It's hard to keep up with it all. Like everything's good, it seems like right now.
Well, yeah, I think Tennessee in general, I feel like we're losing people to all the time. I know my photographer / videographer is looking to move to Tennessee, and it's like such a bittersweet moment for me, because I don't know what I'm going to do when he leaves. He's my right-hand man, and obviously, hopefully I'll get the listing of his property. So I guess there's a little positivity to it, but I'm like devastated that he's like walking out the door on me, so he's moving down your way. So Doug, I want to plug you before we get out of here, because obviously you hear what Doug has to say. His team is incredibly impressive. Number 6 nationally in units last year. Congratulations to you. So if we have clients moving down your way, where can they find you? Want to make sure to set up a referral source back and forth between us and you.
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook's probably the easiest way. Doug Edrington. You can reach out to me on my cell. It's 423-802-3430. Really any way that the world communicates these days, I'm pretty much there. But yeah, we'd love to help. We'd love to help out anybody that's got people coming this way. If you, give us a follow too, like the Edrington team and Doug Edrington. If you YouTube my name, this is the phase when things were really good. I've got about 25 videos out there called the J. Douglas Show. Our brokerage is Berkshire Hathaway J. Douglas Properties. They're very relevant. I wanted to make them evergreen, I guess you could say. And so there's some great coaching videos. If you're looking to figure out how do I add value to my team, or I just need to become a better agent, they're shorts. They're like 10 minutes long, and it's just different topics about how to communicate with different personality types, how to run a great open house. There's a video in there of should I start a team? Should I join a team? Just a lot of great content that my team has mastered, I believe. And so we put it out there to share and, build value for our industry. And, of course, so hopefully it makes people think of us and send us some referrals or maybe even join our team.
Doug, thank you so much. Agents, make sure to give Doug a follow, as he said. And if you have referrals down his way in Chattanooga, make sure to reach out. And thank you so much for your time, man. This was great. Great content. Great, topic to talk about with you.
Thanks for having me on the show, Jason.
All right. Thanks, Doug. That was the conversation with Doug Edrington this week. It was fantastic to be able to talk to him. Here are a few takeaways that I had from our time together. If you have aspirations to be a team leader, or maybe you're already a team leader, remember, Doug talks about being a team leader as a constant race for value. Number one, are you surrounding yourself with people that will help you grow first in order to help your team grow and be more productive? Doug jokingly talks about being the dumbest person in the room, right? You want to surround yourself with people that are going to help you expand your horizons, increase your knowledge base, and therefore pass that down to your team members and be a productive unit. You may have heard the term servant leader before, and that's exactly who we want to be. We want to provide that value to our people, and we start with ourselves, our own personal growth, and we should be striving every day for ourselves to be better in order to make our team better. Number two, have a hiring philosophy or a set of hiring values when taking on new team members. Don't hire just to hire people. Don't hire just to have warm bodies on your team. You want to get the right people. Very rarely does it work out when you have no plan when hiring new team members. So Doug talks about his values as being hungry, humble, smart, having professional maturity, having some swag, and do they pass the vacation test, right? Doug has his concrete set of values when hiring new people. Think about what yours are, and it's going to help you grow in the right way. Last but not least, have a set of defined expectations for any team member that you would be taking on. Just like working with any buyer or seller, we want to set the expectation with our team members, our buyer agents, our assistants, our social media people, whatever they may be and whatever job they may be doing for your team. You want to make sure to have the expectations set so you both are on the same page. It doesn't lead to any confusion down the line between the parties and therefore may be a problem. Doug has defined roles for each team member, has everything in writing, and he has set that expectation so his team knows exactly what their job is, right? And that's what we need to do with our own team. The more organized we are, the more productive that we will be. Well, that's it for the podcast this week. We will be back in another couple of weeks with a new topic, a new guest, and as always, if you want to hear something that we haven't covered yet, please reach out to me, jason.ostrowski@foxroach.com. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to the podcast or left us a review yet, please do so. It helps us to reach more people. Once again, this is Jason Ostrowski saying stay safe out there, stay selling, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast.